The reading this morning is from a classic of anthropology from 1961 called African Genesis by the American writer Robert Ardrey. He wrote, "But we were born of risen apes, not fallen angels. And the apes were armed killers besides. And so what shall we wonder at? Our murders and massacres and missiles and our irreconcilable regiments, or our treaties, whatever they may be worth, our symphonies, however seldom they may be played, our peaceful acres, however frequently they may be converted into battlefields, our dreams, however rarely they may be accomplished. The miracle of humanity is not how far we have sunk, but how magnificently we have risen. We are known among the stars by our poems, not our corpses." Now that reading, I think, is the best answer to what I was talking about last week, which is the idea of, are we born evil or are we born good? Well, the real answer is neither. We are risen apes, not fallen angels. We do not fall under the spell of evil when we kill and destroy. And further, we do not sometimes fall to the level of animals. We can't blame the animals because most animals don't act as badly as we do. The fact of the matter is that when we do bad things, we are acting in ways that we evolved to act. But we also evolved the ability to question the effects of our own evolution. And that's the glass is half full for humanity. One way we question the effects of our evolution is by examining our own actions and what we do in social groups. And one way we do that is by sharing information about how we behave. Words we use to frame that kind of sharing are, news and history and art and literature. There are two polar opposite ways that governments we create deal with the sharing of information. One is through freedom of speech and the press. Last week, I talked about one of the challenges that freedom brings, and that is a torrent of propaganda and fake news. As I mentioned, the Rand Corporation has called Vladimir Putin's method of propaganda the fire hose of falsehood. Putin knows that free societies have a serious flaw. We can't stop fake news because we believe in a free market of ideas. That's the sort of society we live in, and that's one pole. The opposite pole is revealed in the recent torture and murder of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, the totalitarian control and silencing of those who publish information that governments don't want communicated. As you know, it appears that the journalist Jamal Khashoggi was tortured, murdered, and his body sawn into pieces by Saudi agents. So that's the poles we've got, fire hose or bone saws. Unfortunately, I think that pretty well sums up our choices. We insist here at First Unitarian Society that we are a safe place to share dangerous ideas. And what I want to think about today is what sanctuary looks like. Sometimes protecting speech and people can be a very tough order. It may be that the methods we have developed to protect and promote free speech are outmoded in today's world, but we haven't figured out how to fix that. First, let's think about the good old days. Now, just about every American has heard of General Ulysses S. Grant, the Union general who managed to win the Civil War for the Union side. You may also know that General Grant grew up in the northern part of Illinois. Most people don't know that Grant's first assignment in the war was to invade my part of the state, southern Illinois. The settlers in my part of the state migrated there from points south, and many people there supported the Confederacy. General Grant and his troops seized the railroad bridges first in the southern part of the state to protect them from sabotage, and then he destroyed all the printing presses that were sympathetic to the Confederacy, dragged them into the street, and busted them up. You could do that in those days. If you wanted to suppress speech, all you had to do was intimidate or kill the writers and wreck the printing presses. Over the years, I've known writers who worked in the heyday of the suppression back in the Soviet Union days, and I've known several writers from Mexico. One of the controls in both of those places back in those days was to require that every typewriter be registered so that every one of them could be traced, and also requiring government permits in order to buy ink or typewriter ribbons. Until very recently, that worked. Words were a physical thing that could be easily traced, and presses had addresses, and they could be found, seized, and busted up. The laws that grew up about freedom of speech in the press still reflect that older model in most of the world, including here in the United States. But that's not the world we live in now. Jamal Khashoggi communicated electronically, and the press distributing his work was in the United States. Therefore, stopping him the old-fashioned way required imprisonment or murder. Now, I've been involved in the free exchange of ideas for a long time. I got a job at a radio station while I was still in high school, and with that job, I proudly got an ABC radio news reporter little card, and I became a stringer for UPI, United Press International, now bought out by Associated Press. But it was back in the days when those teletypes clacked 24/7, and you've seen it on the movies. I was very proud of my press card. After college, I started publishing essays and poetry, and eventually published enough to get invited to an international writers group called PEN, P-E-N, which stands for Poets, Essayists, and Novelists. It's a worldwide organization. The U.S. chapter was formed in 1922 with founding members like Will Cather and Robert Frost and Eugene O'Neill. The founding documents of that organization insist upon an unhampered, quote, unhampered transmission of thought within each nation and among all nations. And now, those are very grand words, but of course, it's the reality that gets a little bit tricky. What does the unhampered transmission of thought, what does freedom of speech, what does freedom of the press actually mean today, long after movable type has stopped being the way we communicate? Today, every Twitter account is its own printing press, if you will, and YouTube is every person's news network, if you're so inclined. Speech has never been more personal or easier to do. In your order of service this morning is a quote from the Algerian writer and philosopher Elena Cixous. She says, "Censor the body, and you censor breath and speech at the same time. Write yourself," she insists. "Your body must be heard." End quote. Now, when we consider the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, these words take on a little bit different meaning than Dr. Cixous intended. You may know that at least 42 journalists and other media workers were killed last year because of what they were doing. Perhaps you've read Khashoggi's last column that was published in the Washington Post. The article begins, quote, "I was recently looking at the 2018 Freedom of the World report published by Freedom House and came to a grave realization. There is only one country in the Arab world that's been classified as free. That nation is Tunisia. Jordan, Morocco, and Kuwait come second, with the classification partly free. The rest of the countries in the Arab world are classified as not free." Khashoggi goes on to say, "The Arab world is facing its own version of an iron curtain. imposed not by external actors, but through domestic forces vying for power. And he concludes the article by saying, the Arab world needs a modern version of the old transnational media so citizens can be informed about global events. More important, we need to provide a platform for Arab voices, end quote. Now, excuse me for thinking that's not all that radical. And it doesn't seem like something that you really need to be killed about. But it does remind us all that the borders are down and information is flowing everywhere. This fact gives that old idea of the free marketplace of ideas a whole new meaning. Now, the concept of a marketplace of ideas goes back to at least the time of the British Puritan poet John Milton. You remember him from high school, perhaps, who famously argued for a free press in his great 1644 work, Areopagitica. He wrote, "A man may be a heretic in the truth, and if he believe things only because his pastor says so, or the assembly so determines without knowing any other reason, though his belief be true, yet the very truth he holds becomes a heresy." End quote. Yes, that's why nobody around here expects me to tell you anything, right? And we come from that good old Puritan idea, the Unitarians do, that each of us has our own conscience and will come to our own truth. John Milton got that right and set that in motion. And if we believe, he said, things only because the pastor says so, or the assembly so determines, without knowing other reason, though the belief be true, yet the very truth he holds becomes his heresy. In order for a truth to be a truth, Milton is saying, you've got to find that truth for yourself. Milton's claim is that even if a truth is generally accepted, if an individual doesn't fully comprehend that truth, then it isn't true for that person. In other words, a truth is true only if you have wrestled with that truth and found it true. Well, yeah, that's all very grand, of course, and impossible. But think about what would be if we did follow Milton's advice. There couldn't be any Russian troll farms, could there? There couldn't be any anti-Semitism or racism, for that matter. Milton was writing in the early days of what has become party politics, when we assume that all political parties are offering legitimate ideas. That was the idea, anyway. And then voters, citizens, voted to decide which was the most legitimate idea or a compromise. The concept of the marketplace of ideas assumes that ideas are like consumer goods. The good ones sell, and the bad ones sit on the shelf. And the magic is the wisdom that the electorate creates by talking all these legitimate or semi-legitimate ideas out. Now, in the case of lawnmowers and vacuum cleaners, that may be true. It may even be true in the case of medicine or science or psychology, but is it true for political thinking? After all, Milton's writing was coming from a Puritan political agenda aiming to destroy monarchy and a state church. Now, that writing group that I mentioned, Penn, holds an international conference every year. And the first one I attended was in Mexico City. Something on the order of 1,000 writers showed up in Mexico City to attend this conference. We had dinner in the National Palace where every course was announced by a cannon shot. And it's all very grand for an old hillbilly like me. We were treated to a grand tour of the city on buses escorted by police cars with the sirens on. And when the buses stopped, the police in riot gear surrounded the buses and lined the sidewalks into whatever museum or cathedral we were visiting, and they'd been cleared out, so it was just us. Private showing. Now, at first, that felt kind of cool, until I figured out that we were not being protected so much as quarantined from the Mexican public. We were told, in no uncertain terms, that commenting on local politics was strictly prohibited. It turned out that the behavior of the Mexican authorities only appeared odd to some of us from North America and Western Europe. Most of the writers in the world knew what they were doing before it even started. You may have read that my group, PEN America, has sued Trump for official acts that have violated the First Amendment and his oath to uphold the Constitution. The suit cites as examples Trump's intervention in the merger of AT&T and CNN. You may have heard that Trump really doesn't like CNN, right? Trump has also threatened to bring antitrust action against Amazon and raise shipping costs because Amazon's founder owns the Washington Post. And Trump doesn't like the Washington Post. The marketplace of ideas is unfortunately not only about the competition of ideas, it's also about money and power and fire hoses and bone saws. Now, I don't have an answer to the ultimate question that I'm asking today. I don't know that anybody does yet. Last week, about the only answer I could find to the plague of fake news is education and critical thinking, but we know those are in pretty short supply. Fact is, the printing press and the nation states, as we now have them, developed roughly at the same time. They are part of a conceptual whole from the past. It's difficult to imagine a world without national borders. And it's difficult to imagine information without regulation, whether that be by governments or by professional codes of ethics. It's a brave new world we live in, and so far I haven't heard much in the way of how we're going to fix this situation. Since the Second World War, Western governments have, for the most part, embraced the notion of let her rip. It's the best policy towards speech, they've decided. One effect of which is that the resulting cacophony cancels itself out and people begin to self-censor themselves, listening only to those news sources that reward their own preconceptions. Now, bad actors have added a fire hose of falsehood to that torrent of information that free societies have let loose. Frankly, I suspect that Trump and Turkey's Erdogan are genuinely nonplussed by the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. It's very old school, after all, but the Saudi family lives in its own echo chamber. Another troubling trend is the rise in non-governmental censorship through intimidation. Mexico is the best example of that. And of course, we watched the pipe bomb situation unfold over the week. You may have read a recent op-ed in the New York Times by the environmentalist Bill McKibben, who is the founder of 350.org. He wrote, "In a world where the president goes on Twitter to call a woman horseface, it seems pointless to call for civility. So let me suggest that we start with a lower bar. Maybe one could still hope to achieve. Let's stop threatening to kill one another." End quote. Well, yeah, Robert Ardrey was right in that reading. We are born of risen apes, not fallen angels, and the apes are armed killers besides. As I said earlier, the fact of the matter is that when we do bad things, we're acting as our species evolved to act. But we have also evolved the ability to question the direction of our own evolution. And that's the bright spot we must hold on to. We have risen on the shoulders of those brave enough to express themselves in the face of opposition and oppression and violence. Poets, essayists, novelists, journalists, belletristes, and those spray painting on those subway walls too. As Ardrey put it long ago, the miracle of humanity is not how far we have sunk, but how magnificently we have risen. We are known among the stars by our poems, not our corpses.